There is an undercurrent of dissatisfaction brewing among the young in China. A new phenomenon called 摆烂, meaning let it rot.
我对摆烂的理解就是，假如领导交给我一件事情，我就是说，能不能明天再做，或者是能不能交给别人做，或者是能不能不做。
With some 200,000 members on related online forums and growing, this movement is a pushback against the competitive rat race in China.
这么一部分人，他选择摆烂，就是他会觉得说，我今天的这个工作内容，或者说我承担的这个任务，是我怎么做都无法去完成的，或者说怎么做都做不好的。
As China grapples with its zero-COVID policy, a sluggish economy, and nearly 20% unemployment among youths, could these unmotivated Chinese youths jeopardize Xi Jinping's vision of a China rejuvenation?
If 摆烂 continue, it will have a lot of turbulence in China.
Li Xiaolin works in his uncle's shop in Beijing, a motor vehicle inspection factory. For 6 days a week, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., he checks for mechanical faults, such as leaks in the fuel system or worn tires, and minor repairs like changing oil or filters. The high school graduate is sociable and gets along very well with his co-workers. But when it comes to the job itself, he is indifferent.
不能说满意，也不能说不满意。工作就是很枯燥、很乏味，就是平常也是能混就混，这样。乏味就是每天工作都是一样的，就跟复制粘贴一样，周一到周六是一样的，这周跟下周是一样的。
And this youthful 25-year-old, the lack of motivation extends to other aspects of his life.
平常生活就是周一到周六复制粘贴，9点上班，5点下班，然后回家吃饭、睡觉、玩手机，就这样。周末的话，跟朋友会打个球、喝个小酒，就这样。
Xiaolin is well aware of the social phenomenon 摆烂, to let it rot. He admits he has a 摆烂 attitude.
我对摆烂的理解就是，假如领导交给我一件事情，我就是说，能不能明天再做，或者是能不能交给别人做，或者是能不能不做这种，不会说是欣然去接受这个工作，然后实在是没办法，然后才自己去做，做也就是只是做而已，不会把它做好。
摆烂 first trended online in Chinese gaming communities in early 2022. It was seen as the spiritual successor of an earlier movement known as Tanping or lying flat. So, to understand 摆烂, we have to look at Tanping, a social phenomenon that took China by storm in 2021. Here's something that one blogger posted in Baidu in April last year. The post called on young people, who are the engine of the country's growth, to opt out of the struggle for workplace success. Tanping, or lying flat, promises release from the crush of life where competition is unrelenting. This post went viral and state media scrambled to launch a series of rebuttals. Search functions on Tanping, on WeChat and Douban were disabled, effectively censored. So, why did Tanping resonate with Chinese youths?
The idea of Tanping is actually pretty universal in the sense that a lot of young people are tired of the kind of games that society apparently is asking them to engage in, and they are not too interested in this kind of competition, you know, and so they prefer a different kind of lifestyle. The number of graduates, you know, from universities and, you know, with college degrees is something like 10 million. Of course, this year is quite challenging in the sense that so many graduate from college, and jobs are scarce. The competition is keen. So that is why I'm saying that the idea that I don't want to engage in this kind of competition. I want to躺平, okay, lie flat.
The COVID-19 pandemic has dragged into 2022. The Chinese authorities were determined to maintain its zero COVID policy. The economy bore the brunt of the sweeping and repeated lockdowns. Economists estimated that China was losing $45 billion in GDP per month as major hubs of Shenzhen, Shanghai and Beijing closed off one by one. A record 10.8 million graduates are expected to join the workforce this year, even as youth unemployment stands at 18.4%. Perhaps on the back of this dark economic mood, the relatively benign Tanping degenerated into the more cynical Bailan.
Tanping means that I could not actually move up the ladder. I just try to save myself by minimizing my social activity and economic activities. Bailan basically say no to the system. I will not cooperate. I even don't bother to be listening to you. I just try to actually have my own style. Then I have my own antisocial behavior. Bailan is even worse than Tanping. So that's the reason why Chinese leadership really worry about this trend.
For Xiaolin, he says he wasn't always like that. After finishing high school, he had high hopes of finding a good job and making a good living.
有想过吧，但是也曾经因为自己算是努力工作过，然后就努力着，感觉就没毅力，坚持不了，然后就慢慢的就越来越这样。为什么坚持不了？就是，感觉还是枯燥乏味吧。坚持这种东西本来就是很枯燥乏味的事情。然后坚持个3-5天可能还行，然后把某一件事情坚持时间长了是真的很枯燥很乏味，就不想去做了，就感觉坚持也行，不坚持也行，到不坚持还舒服，就选择让自己舒服的事情。
Stories of young people like Xiaolin who are unmotivated and indifferent are not new. Almost every nation, society and generation will have their own fair share of what we call slackers. But for China, it is also seen as a rejection of the country's economic direction, and the authorities are taking notice. In May 2022, President Xi Jinping gave a major speech on the 100th anniversary of the May 4th movement. And the focus was squarely on Chinese youths. The May 4th movement is an important milestone in Chinese history. It commemorates the student uprising in 1919 against imperialism and marks the spread of communism. In his speech, Xi urged the youth to focus on the country and not just on personal goals.
In every society, young people will think older people actually eating up all kinds of resources. Then older people will think young people are lazy, you are not contributing to the society. But in China, this is something slightly different because of it's something already been there for a while. People could see that a lot of frustration among youth. So that's the reason why he particularly mentioned about the importance of youth and also the future.
Guan Aizi is a freelance private tutor. Her hours are leisurely, and she teaches no more than 2 classes per day. After that, she's off to a public park to indulge in her favorite pastime, skateboarding.
目前工作的就是这个状态还是挺轻松的，并不是很忙，因为就是根据现在国内的这个政策嘛，然后对我们其实也是影响比较大的。
In August 2021, Chinese authorities launched a sweeping crackdown on private and online tuition, which wiped out an estimated 3 million jobs. Private tutors like Aizi were directly affected as she lost many students and a large chunk of her income. But instead of finding a supplementary job, Aizi spends some 4 to 5 hours at the skate park each day. That would seem unusually laid back for a 29-year-old single university graduate living in one of the most expensive cities in China.
大学毕业的时候是会想着说，我自己能做一份非常好的工作，或者说直白一点，就我能赚大钱，我能赚很多的钱。大学刚毕业的时候就觉得啊，我无所不能，我好像充满了能量，充满了能力，然后，只要我自己去努力，因为年轻嘛，然后就是一切皆有可能。
Overtime was a regular occurrence, and she could work up to 15 hours a day.
但是时间久了就会发现，其实你所付出的这个劳动和你最后得到的这个收入其实是不成正比的。当身体出现状况，就是觉得会支撑不住，就每天都会很累。因为之前的工作就是压力也比较大，工作量也比较大，然后久而久之吧，就会觉得承受不住。就是其实身体的这种状态，通过休息调整什么，就都可以调整过来。但是有时候心理的那种状态，焦虑，就是你再怎么去卷，再怎么去努力，可能你就是不如别人，就是你的终点可能就是不如人家的起点好。我也就接受了，我就妥协了。对，像我自己选择摆烂的这种生活方式，我觉得是对于我来说是很好的，所以我觉得大家可能不会去干涉，或者说不会去叫什么审判彼此的生活方式吧。
Li Xiaolin echoes the same sentiment as Aizi. Bailan is a personal choice, and nobody should judge him for this.
我感觉这种东西不是消极的，消极我感觉是个贬义词，摆烂我感觉并不一定是个贬义词，只是安于生活现状吧。
But there are some who are bewildered by the Bailan generation's attitude, the Gen X and Boomers who came before them.
To me, Bailan is a shock to me as an older generation of Chinese because of we never imagined that this is some sort of rebellion from younger generation because they could not actually see the hope.
现在年轻人，这种拼搏的精神跟我们那个时候比，确实我觉得有很大的不同，确实有一些减弱。
So what happened in the intervening years between Generation X and Generation Z in China that has led to the rise of Bailan youths and their sense of doom and despair?
又输了。
Under Chairman Mao Zedong's leadership, the turbulent periods of the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution negatively impacted the economy. From 1950 to 1976, China's GDP never grew by more than 2%. Almost 30 years after establishing the People's Republic of China in 1949, the economy was unproductive. The GDP per capita income was $165 in 1976. After Mao's death in 1976, Deng Xiaoping became the paramount leader in 1978. He launched a series of far-reaching market reforms that would transform China from an isolated, impoverished state to become the world's second-largest economy. Deng instituted the open door policy, which allowed foreign direct investment in China. From 1978 to 2013, the economy grew by an average of 9.5% a year, a pace described by the World Bank as the fastest sustained expansion by a major economy in history.
Deng Xiaoping encouraged people to work hard to try to get rich as much as they can, so to be the first group of the people to get rich in China. That kind of the release the energy, passion, and motivation for a group of the people who have been suppressed during the Cultural Revolution. So they particularly cherish the opportunity.
It was on the back of that dynamic energy that a self-described bookworm, Zhou Rong, as a young adult in that era, found his calling and fortune. After graduating from university, Zhou taught mathematics in high school for 10 years. The turning point came in 1993.
商业的这个气氛更加浓厚之后呢，就觉得是要想变化一下，所以从93年才开始下海做这个经商的这些事情的，主要是做机电设备的进出口，属于这方面，引进一些西方的先进的一些机电设备。因为在这个专业上来讲，我原来是高等数学的，所以搞机电设备可以说是一个门外汉。在这个过程当中，肯定要自己学习一些东西。另外呢，就是开拓市场。那个时候呢，很辛苦，可以说很原始的开拓市场。我们那时候就跟着这个外商，然后拉上机器设备，在全国的这个我们认为的这个能源行业的这些客户啊，去走访、演示，就是做一些这种实际现场的这种这个使用的培训会。
Deng's famous directive to let a few people get rich first opened the floodgates of the Chinese entrepreneurial drive.
They can work hard, they can actualize their dream, especially material dream, because before, during the Cultural Revolution and before, majority of the Chinese people are really poor.
是的，我们周围的人不管干哪个行业的，我所了解到的，大家基本上都是这样的。也就是说，就是为了改变自己的这个生活状态，同时呢，有更广阔的一个天地去开拓，就是这样的一种感受。因为他的性格就是想出稳定。
Zhou Rong attributes his business success to the vast opportunities available during the Deng Xiaoping era, when there was less competition.
我们那个时候是大量的人可能还在陈旧在原来的这种生活状态和思维，而少量的人在开拓、在进取，所以那时候的机会可能比现在更多一些。现在这个社会可以说，哪个行业、哪个产品都有人在做。
The breakneck speed of growth and expansion of the Chinese economy was difficult to sustain. And since 2010, the double-digit growth of China's GDP has tapered downwards. From over 10.6% in 2010 to around 6% in 2019. And this dropped to 2.3% when the pandemic hit in 2020. But even as the Chinese economy grew, so did inequality. China's Gini coefficient, which measures income distribution, is more unequal than most Western countries.
I would say that Deng Xiaoping opened the door. It's very good, and Deng Xiaoping had a lot of reform in China, also very good. But at that time, I would say many people made a mistake. They think market economy can solve everything, but they ignore social development, they ignore social welfare. Then they develop some anti-social welfare sentiment. I think the phenomenon of lying flat did not actually start from last year or the year before. It was there for a while. A lot of observers already noticed that social immobility in China is a problem since early 2000s. Not actually just say in recent 2 or 3 years, because many Chinese suffer from, they call it the burden of 3 mountains.
The 3 mountains refer to education, healthcare, and housing. Between 2004 and 2013, average housing prices grew 17% per annum, but incomes grew just 11% in the same period. In top-tier city Shanghai alone, between 2000 and 2010, the price index for Shanghai homes soared 121%.
The property bubble really make the society very much driven by property inflation. So many young folk, they could not afford to buy a flat because their salary would not actually enable them to afford an apartment. Then education issue, they have children to cultivate. They will feel that the tuition fee will be very much substantial for them, particularly private tuition fee. Some people told me that even a star tutor could actually charge you much more, like 800, 1,000 Singapore dollar. It's unbelievably for these sort of people, particularly they are not earning a decent salary. The aging issue is irreversible in China. People are getting old, so medical costs will increase. I'm not quite sure this current generation could actually have for the same money like the parents. So they need to have lots of money for the future. And then the anxiety level will be very, very high.
25-year-old Wang Yandong works in healthcare management in Beijing. It wasn't his first choice of career as he studied engineering in university.
我大学学的是机电一体化，刚开始毕业的时候在那个电子厂工作，觉得跟机器打交道，觉得非常的枯燥无味，所以说，经朋友介绍来，然后就到北京这边做大健康医疗。大学没有学好吧，可能达不到高精尖那种人才，然后就是可能很多专业没有吃透，所以说在那个行业只能做底层的这种流水线工作，所以觉得没啥意思。
Leaving Gansu province for Beijing, life in the big city hasn't turned out to be a bed of roses. He's been here for almost 5 years and feels he's further from his original goals than before.
可能在北京打拼可能是太累了吧，可能跟理想跟现实可能是比较残酷的。现在可能无法满足，因为拿着基本的工资的话，你不可能在北京买房啊，也不可能说以后在北京定居生活，可能是远远达不到这种要求的。
Now he identifies as Bailan and happy to put in the minimal effort to get by.
摆烂，我觉得就是事情不能向好的方向发展，然后就任其他无所谓，就是有点破罐子破摔的意思。比如说，我们平常比较爱玩游戏嘛，空闲时间比较多。当我打英雄联盟的时候，可能跟队友之间感觉这一局可能赢的希望不大了，所以说我就可能放弃着，而且也有可能会故意去送人头，就当一个简单的单机游戏打一打。比较喜欢打篮球嘛，然后跟一些队友打配合的时候可能打不太好，然后他们可能的分数比我们高太多，所以说我也就可能就放弃了。防人的时候可能也不想去防了，就这样感觉，你输也行赢也行，可能就这样无所谓了。能不加班就不加班，反正就是每天准时准点来，朝九晚五，可能到点就下班，然后下班之间也不会去想工作这些事儿。就是除了每天想吃什么喝什么，然后去丰富一下自己的业余爱好啥的，打打球啥的。
This lackadaisical attitude is a far cry from Zhou Rong's experience back in the 1990s.
就是要趟出一条路子来，然后没有早九晚五这一说。因为我作为销售来讲，作为销售工程师来讲，或者作为老板来讲，都是感觉到这种。好像是跟自己直接相关的这种出发点，所以没有早九晚五的这种想法，所以做任何事情都是夜以继日吧。这个不同于现在人想在一个安逸的家庭里边早九晚五的那样的一个生活状态，完全不同。我们现在国家的这个状态啊，经济环境啊，生活水平啊，都已经有了很大的提高了。他们的家庭啊，各个方面可能都给了他们一定的保障，所以有一些人可能就认为这就是可以生活了。
Here's a meme of Bailan on Weibo. There's a tidal wave of such Bailan memes, to let it rot, on the Chinese web at the moment. But because of Chinese censorship of words like Tamping and Bailan, it's difficult to really gauge how widespread the phenomenon is, and experts caution that it's not fair to paint all Chinese Gen Z with the same brush.
That is not something that would describe the majority of young people in China. That's just not the case. Most people are still are trying to make the most out of what they can, given whatever opportunities there are.
我们这个工作的性质，销售行业也是需要有业绩产出的，要不然是没有法养活自己的。我哪怕今天的工作时长可能能达到12个小时，我能为客户做这样的服务，总体下来我是很有成就感的。
Who are these high achievers compared to the Bailan youths? And more importantly, what do they think of each other? It's almost 9 p.m. in Beijing. The city streets are still abuzz with traffic and activity, but it's noticeably less than what it was before the global pandemic. Flare-ups of the highly infectious Omicron variant of COVID-19 have triggered disruptive episodes of closing and reopening of the capital city. 28-year-old Zhang Yingqiu has just returned home after almost 12 hours at the office. The insurance agent is still not done with work. She's researching some details for a meeting the next morning.
忙的时候真的还是挺忙的，比如说一天我们拿8小时工作日来说的话，有的时候特别忙，可能会接触到3、4个客户的问题，那我一天下来还要做其他的业务的处理的事情，可能能达到11个小时都有可能。
对，还是要以客户为中心。
She thrives on the demanding hours and proudly associates with the 996 culture, working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week.
应该说可以算是态度上的996吧。你只有把你的工作时长和工作效率都提高了，其实才会有业绩产出嘛。在我这个行业里来，我可能想要一个年薪100万，或者是年薪更多，这是我的一个非常好的一个理想目标。目前来讲，还是要继续奋斗和继续努力的一个阶段。毕竟我还很年轻，我觉得年薪100万或者年薪1000万，那是一个非常很大的目标，我还在努力的过程里，再去实现的过程里。但是我很享受这个过程，很高兴，很愉悦。
灰色的就是
一个就是想要在工作上有业绩产出的话，那么工作的时长的付出是一定的，因为你的付出是以回报成正比的，所以每一天的工作量的时长控制是跟最后的想要的结果是有一个相关性的。在这个问题上的话，不论是我的一个销售工作，还是其他行业的正经的996的这种工作安排。
The term 996 and the culture of overtime has a long history in Chinese IT companies. They are focused on productivity and cost reduction. The 996 culture proponents include Alibaba co-founder Jack Ma and JD.com CEO Richard Liu. A website called 996.icu was created. It encouraged workers to upload their work schedules that reveal the punishing hours. Some 110 Chinese IT companies are listed on this whistleblowing site, including Huawei, Alibaba, and Baidu.
This is some sort of developing countries phenomenon. They want to catch up, so they work very hard. This catch-up effect happen in many contexts. So in generally, everyone try their best to have a much more better position in the society. So everyone try to work hard. So they have this kind of mindset called 996.
The ethic of hard work was the backbone on which China built its economic miracle from the 1980s and 1990s, during the Deng Xiaoping era of market reforms. 63-year-old Zhou Rong prospered during that period, well before the term 996 became popular.
就是这样，长期的在这个路上。那个时候交通也没有这么发达，所以基本上就是各个这个省份都去过，而且这些能源的这些炼油厂、发电厂都是在这个郊区，不是在城市里，所以这个可以说很辛苦，但是觉着很有兴致。那个时候我们国家的这个 工业这方面还有相当地方比较落后，所以见到这些新的，能够提高这个生产效率的机械设备，用户也十分有兴趣。夫人跟我也不在一起，也是相当于是分居两地。那个时候的这种考虑啊，作为家庭的这种都在一起的生活，这个考虑不多，就是要趟出一条路子来。我们那时候这个分居也是很正常的，直到我后面有一定的这个基础之后，家庭才在一起，孩子才在一起。当时非常多的人都是这个状态，所以我们就作为这个属于技术开拓普及的这个工作，从这一点上，我个人的感觉也是很有成就感的。
手臂上去。
For Zhang Yingqiu, although she's a generation apart from Zhou Rong, she shares the view that hard work is to be lauded.
当然我这样努力的工作，第一个就是说，一个经济收入的基础，这个是肯定的。但除此之外，我这么努力的工作给我的一个推动力，还是我想实现一个自己的一个社会价值。这一点对我来讲，对我个人是非常重要的。所以就无论遇到什么样的困难，我哪怕今天的工作时长可能能达到12个小时，我能为客户做这样的服务，总体下来我是很有成就感的。那按照这样的速度发展下去的话，我对我这个工作的预期是有一个很好的一个期待的。那随着我收入的增多，我是有计划在北京长期扎根生存下去的。哪怕以后比如说有结婚买房的计划呀，或者是其他的那种更好的一些计划。
And so, the Bailan movement is seen as a rejection of the 996 work ethic.
In the past, 996 means that they seldom say no to the bosses. They like to actually entertain bosses' requests. So in China, you can see older generation, even they work very hard. But now, younger generation, they know how to protect themselves. Because after all, they don't think they work hard, they can have a better future. So they would rather actually enjoy their lives.
So, what do the adherents of the 996 work culture think of the Bailan movement?
如果他产生了摆烂的心态的话，我觉得他没有为社会做出贡献和价值。就是他这样的状态，可能没有产生生产力，并没有促进任何事情的改变和发展。因为作为一个社会上每个行业来讲，其实都是要有产能的，才能推动这个社会的进步嘛。我可能还会成为某个企业一个部门的负担，那我觉得这个是对我来讲有点不太能承受的。所以我的价值观里的一个概念是，我在其位要谋其职，要产生一个生产力，起码为公司做一些价值，我拿到的收入呀，我理所应当的。
都会去年轻。
我们那个时候所谓不积极，我认为不是一个风气，大家可以说都很积极。但是现在出现的这个状态，我理解的可以说是一种消极，或者是一种得过且过。我认为肯定是不好的，对国家对于这个民族都不是一个好的事情。因为可以说从改革开放这几十年来吧，实际上就是大家想思变，想改变自己的生活状态，作为最初的出发点，才有了这几十年的这个变化。
Millennials like Xiaolin, Aizi and Yantong, all who have identified themselves as Bailan, beg to differ. For them, their personal happiness comes first.
自私不至于，自我可以这样说，可以说比较自我，不喜欢承担责任，就这样。
之前就特别喜欢去世界各地去旅游，然后更认清自己了。就是对于赚钱这件事情，不是说没有欲望了，只是说可能是没有之前的那种冲劲儿了。我们也是在我们自己力所能及的 这个就是范围内去做这一些事情。
我们这种状态呢，可能就是因为再坚持，可能是达不到这种要求，也达不到那个最初的梦想，所以说就可能就有点放弃，就是说感觉现在的生活其实过得也挺好，感觉像那种无所谓的状态。
We are now really getting to that stage in which people's lives can improve with a higher quality and less focus on getting rich, and that is why these younger people, a lot of these younger people who can reflect, they are actually pretty smart, because they think that just trying to make an extra buck, that's not the main purpose of life. There's something else. They're achieving in different areas.
But if Bailan is simply a passive social movement, why are the Chinese authorities nervous about it? In the important May 4th movement anniversary speech this year, President Xi Jinping took great pains to send a strong message of empowerment to Chinese youths.
The young people will take over the future of China eventually, right? So it's important for him to give the young people the encouragement. Xi Jinping doesn't want to be looked upon as someone who's very authoritarian. He doesn't want to look very paternalistic. So the idea is to give them a sense of empowerment, and I think that is important, because only when people feel that they are empowered, that they have this positive attitude, toward life, and that will make life worthwhile, worth living, as well as make China more competitive.
To address the social immobility and lack of opportunities that's causing the despondent attitude of Bailan, the Chinese leadership moved to level the playing field. President Xi launched a Common Prosperity Campaign in August 2021. Its main objective was to narrow the wealth gap between the rich and the poor, and to make sure China's progress is inclusive.
Over competition means that everyone, because of the cake is not big, so everyone just try to compete for very small slice of cake. So everyone just try very hard. Parents try very hard to cultivate their children, then try to get the better higher education, then try to have a better job. The main problem is resources are not big. The cake is not big enough, so they cannot actually have more. Then the problem is the income inequality and also social mobility.
A slew of multi-pronged crackdowns was enforced to reduce inequality. Big tech companies were slapped with hefty fines for monopolistic practices, and billionaire IT leaders were humbled. IT companies were instructed to give more back to society in the form of charity. Private online education, accessible to rich parents who can afford to give their children a leg up, was banned. This was seen as a way to level the playing field in terms of education. Property ownership, a major sticking point for the haves and have-nots, came under scrutiny. To cool out the red-hot property sector, the government raised interest rates and restricted working capital for property developers. Even the 996 culture came under fire. The 996 working hour system was ruled illegal by China's Supreme People's Court in August 2021. So clearly, the discontent among the youth is a cause of concern among the Chinese leadership, especially at a time when a sluggish COVID recovery and a real estate bubble threaten to derail the Chinese economy.
The government definitely doesn't like people to 躺平, right? it's just like a parents, right? You don't want your kids 躺平. Government doesn't want its people to 躺平 because its people are very important labor force, right? Especially for the young generation, they are hope of the future country.
I understand that the authorities think that if you talk about 躺平 too much, and then people may see that as a new lifestyle that is encouraged. It becomes a fad, when it becomes a kind of culture which would hurt people's perspective, would limit people's perspective.
This is something I think should worry Chinese leadership much more, because a lying flat means that I just take care of myself. I will not actually do anything. I could not buy an apartment, so why not I just enjoy my life and have lots of entertainments. But bailan means that I would not like to try my best. I would just try my worst. Yeah. So in generally, it's a race to bottom culture in China. I don't want to be a good student. I just want to be a poor student. Then please don't touch me. So it's a part of rebellion. It's a part of say no to the government.
However, are the fears of a large social movement and unrest overstated? 29-year-old Guan Aizi feels the authorities have nothing to worry about.
我觉得就是国家肯定会是正向的引导吧，希望大家积极的去发展，但是我觉得像就是我身边或者说我自己的这种躺平状态，也并没有给国家去拖后腿，因为我们不是说就无所事事了，或者是给父母、给家庭或者给社会造成负担，我们也是在我们自己力所能及的范围内去做着一些事情。就像有的人他就是科学家，他去搞科研，那有的人他可能就是当老师，他去当园丁去教书育人，那有的人他就是去做清洁工作，然后去打扫城市。我觉得每个人在这个社会当中，他都有一个角色，他去扮演他的角色都是不可或缺的。他只要是做他力所能及的事，不给这个社会拖后腿，我觉得这种状态就是 OK 的，我不觉得是会给国家或者政府带来什么不良的消极的影响。
Li Xiaolin and Wang Yandong don't think their attitude is a problem for China either.
我觉得不会有什么影响，因为毕竟还是有更多的人才，有很多的国家的这种栋梁之才，也不是说全是这种人，所以说每个人可能生活的这种概念方式不同，也有好的也有坏的，也不是说全都是坏的。没有想过要摆脱，觉得现在这种现状，觉得现状觉得挺好。
蝼蚁如何撼动大树？我肯定是影响不到国家的，然后不会影响到国家，国家肯定是好的，国家的大的目标肯定是好的。我这种不会影响到国家，积极向上肯定是好，我这种也不一定是不好，我就这一个评价，不能说是人家怎么样，是感觉人家挺好的，积极向上，年轻人本来就该奋斗，但是我不想奋斗。
For now, at least, bailan is still largely confined to the online sphere, seen as a relatively fringe movement.
Bailan, it's something intentionally not doing their job, but China has large stock of the labor force. So why people bailan? Because why some people bailan? Because they're the fierce competition in the labor market and in education. So that means there are still a large group of people, they are extremely hardworking, so that can ensure China's economic development. But I'm sure it's a small group of the people, but given China's larger scale of the population, it wouldn't threat China's economic development.
I don't see bailan as a social phenomenon. I see that as just the kind of thinking of some people that characterize some people, and it's not the entire generation. We shouldn't generalize, so I don't worry about it, but I think that the authorities should address the problem by confronting them, and I think so far the signs are pretty positive for China, especially when you compare to other countries. China is doing well.
From its traumatic and bloody birth,
abundance of violence all over the country.
A million people perhaps butchered.
India at 75 has come a long way.
I do see a much brighter future for India.
Can India finally live up to its potential?
अभी तक हमारे गांव को आज़ादी नहीं मिली है.
India is a beacon for the rest of the world.
India at 75. Promises fulfilled? Insight. Thursday on CNN.